Nikki Vee, welcome to Coffee Chats.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. I've spoken to many people, letting them know that I was chatting to a sex worker today, and they were very, very intrigued, can I say? Um,
Yeah, I
I,
get that
I,
a lot.
I bet you do. Obviously, want to talk in depth about that, but first of all, Nikki, are you a coffee drinker?
I'm not a coffee drinker. I am a tea drinker, though, and I have made my cup of tea in preparation for
You
our
have.
chat today. So it's
Oh,
not
very good.
coffee, but it's close.
The next best thing. What sort of tea do you drink?
Just a typical Earl Grey, white,
Yeah.
way too many sugars.
How many sugars do you have?
This one currently has three in it.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
I
pretty sweet.
recently quit drinking Coke, drinking Coca-Cola, so I'm trying to replace that sugar content.
How much, it was obviously an issue for you to stop doing it. How much Coke a day were you drinking?
Yeah, so I was probably drinking 4+ cans a day. And
Wow.
so I'd done this for like 15 years. And
Mm.
anybody who knows me knows the running joke that some people have breakfast, some people have a breakfast coffee. I would have a breakfast Coke.
No.
So
Wake up to a can of Coke.
hmm that was
Wow,
how I
wow.
got my day started. So
Okay.
35 days without soft drink now. So that's a win.
Well done. Did you go down the Diet Coke road or the sugar-free or any of those
Oh
sorts of things?
no, they just taste terrible.
Mm.
No,
Always a
it's
full
been a
strength.
hard yard drinking anything else. Anything else is just gross.
Did you get, what, once you quit, did you get the headaches and were you a bit
Yeah,
anxious or angry?
for the first sort of 2 to 4 days, I was just really filled with headaches. I was taking like Panadol every sort of 3 to 4 hours to stay on top of the headaches, and you just get really tired
Mm.
because your brain, everything is changing. So you're so used to having that much caffeine that when the caffeine is no longer filling up those receptors, you've now got all of these receptors that are like, yes, bring on those sleeping chemicals, and
That's
you
right.
just crash so bad.
Wow.
But after 4 days, that was over, and I could start. It's just the craving. Like you always want it. If anything
Mm.
you've ever been addicted to, you just want it. And Coca-Cola for me has always been. That's my addiction. That's the thing that I've always had. So
Right.
yeah, 35 days is like the best that I've ever done.
I
29 was my last
Oh, well done. Well done.
best. Thanks.
I recently put a hold on drinking alcohol. It's been almost a month, and I genuinely do feel a lot better, more energetic, a lot more
hmm
clarity with my thinking. Did you have that when you stopped drinking Coke?
I feel like I kind of had the opposite. I now actually fall asleep at an appropriate time at night. I now wake up earlier in the morning. I'm not a fan of
Ah,
this.
yeah.
But I've also, because I don't, lounge around as much in kind of this creative pre-sleep mode, I find that like my creative writing and stuff has suffered a little bit.
Uh-huh.
I just don't feel as creative anymore. So I'm going to have to figure out a way around that.
Fine. I hear drugs are good for that, Nikki. You might no,
Yeah, you know
no,
what?
I
I've
don't I
been
don't
told
condone
that,
that.
you know what? I think I'm good. I think I'm good without it. That would pretty much breach my number one working rule: no drugs.
Uh-huh. Well, look, let's segue into that. And can I say, as much to tell you, but also our listeners, is that I've been, um, it's been a goal for quite some time now to get a sex worker on the show because it is an industry and an area that lots of people are very inquisitive about.
It is.
And there's been a number, and I think I mentioned to you in the few weeks that we've known each other now, I mentioned that I have tried to, have a conversation with other sex workers before, and for whatever reason, they've said, thanks, but no thanks.
Mm.
Why
I,
is it that you were okay to chat to a journalist about your profession?
I've always been really big on educating people. If there's something people don't know, or if there's something that they're unsure about, they really should go and learn a little bit about it.
Mm,
And when I started doing this work, the common questions that I got were really based on so much misunderstanding. People have this idea that it's like on TV, that it's, skimpy skirts and stockings and these little tiny leopard print jumpers hanging out on the side of a street somewhere and leaning in car doors.
mm,
I've never leant inside any car windows in my entire life, and I don't plan on starting now.
That's right.
But I think the big thing is I'm just so casual and comfortable with my work and what I do, and I think I'm a very nice person, so that tends to come across for other people, and it creates this almost split image. On the one hand, they sit there and they see me and just go, Nikki is so just normal and nice and everyday. That doesn't fit with what I think I know about what sex work is.
Yes.
And that sort of provides the space for people to go, maybe it's not what I thought it was.
You are obviously very open about it, and you're right. It's only through people like yourself that we break down these assumptions and these walls around what people think sex work is. Were you always so comfortable and open about your sex life, even early on?
I think my personal sex life, even from early on, I was always quite inquisitive and interested in sex and all the massive variety of sexual things that people can do. But I was also very stifled by society's view on sex. Sex was something that happened to you. It really wasn't something that you were a part of. And that's a thing that a lot of women
as a female,
still
Nikki, do you
struggle
mean?
with. Yeah,
Right.
as a woman, sex happens to you. You're not really an active participant in it. It's something that you're expected to do, but not really for yourself. Whereas I was super into it, but society kind of kept it more hush-hush. And then as I got older, I got a lot more self-confidence in myself, and I started to meet other people who were like-minded. And I just went, no, this is actually completely fine, completely normal. And I started to talk to more and more people about it. And I realized the more I spoke about it, the more other people put their hand up and said, yeah, I feel like that too. I have these thoughts and I'm interested in this sort of thing, but I didn't know that other people were. I didn't know it was okay. Sexuality is fine.
Yeah. Did you have much of a conversation with your parents around, the birds and the bees and all that sort of stuff early on?
If I did, I don't remember it. I'm pretty sure I remember my mum giving me a book on the topic, but it wasn't really discussed. And if I'm honest, that probably put me at more risk for sexual harm, sexual assault, and that sort of unwanted sexual advances than if people around me had just been open and honest about it. Because, when minor things happened, you didn't mention it. They were just awkward, weird things that happened, but you don't talk about it.
Yes.
And that sort of stuff stifles people even more. Whereas now I'm like, no, I'm super open about all of this stuff and having these conversations now. And I advocate that parents should be able to start having conversations with their kids around sex, sexuality, and how some of that stuff works, and what is of interest to them, really.
Was there you are very open now, and as you say early on that wasn't the conversation happening at home. Was there a moment or a time in your life where that changed for you?
I think when I left home and moved to Brisbane and sort of became part of that big city life. I'm a small country town girl, and then I moved to the city, and that was when I really first realized that being different was probably okay, and that you're allowed to like things that other people don't like. But even to this day, my parents don't know what I do because they don't live anywhere near me. And since I only see my parents at the big holidays, it's not exactly something you want to raise at the Christmas dinner table, I feel like that would be selfish because that would probably put a dampener on their Christmas. And I don't feel like I have a right to do that. But my siblings know what I do. My partners know what I do. My friends know what I do. Even a few of my uni peers know what I do. So, and it's not something that I shout from the rooftops. It's just if someone says, "Oh, what do you do for work?" I go, "Yeah, I work as a sex worker." And they go, "Oh, really? How does that work?" And then the conversations just tend to flow like that.
Goes from there.
So far, I've not had any negative responses, so that's good.
Yeah. just from what you said then, there's a number of seeds of conversation that I want to touch on. The first one is there is it fair to say that you aren't that close to your parents, or you are?
I think the issue that we have is just distance. You know, I'm on the Sunshine Coast and they're in far north Queensland. So we don't get home all that often. And while Mum and I talk quite often, that gap of sexual conversations just not there. We will pretty much talk about almost anything except for things that are kind of intimate like that.
Got it.
It's just not how we were raised, and it's just not something that you talk about.
So why then, and I'm only asking out of interest, but why then tell your siblings? I mean, is there any fear that they might go back to your mum and dad and tell them?
Yeah, both my siblings said, "Don't tell Mum." And I think part of it is because they were raised in the same situation that I am. It's also not something that they're not conversations that they're particularly comfortable about having either.
Sure.
And I think I told them almost like a courage building step. You know, if I let my siblings know, that's one step closer to letting my parents know. Eventually, I plan to let my parents know. I mean, in a perfect world, by the end of the year, they will know. In the beginning, it was a case of, oh, you know, we'll see how long I do this work for. There may be no point in telling them. I might not really like the job.
Sure.
And then as time goes on, it's kind of like, how do I broach that topic and be like, hey, Mum, so I need to let you know what I've really been doing for the past 3 years, and go from there.
How do you think she'll take it? Why are your siblings saying don't tell Mum? Are they concerned that she might go off the deep end?
I think it's just one of those generational things. You know, it's not a topic that the older generation are typically happy to have. That said, I think that at the end of the day, my mum will be fine with it. My mum's always been supportive of the things that I've wanted to go off and do in life, even when she didn't agree with them, even when she knew that it was probably not going to work out so well. She always supported it anyway.
Sure.
I mean, I was the youngest of 3, so I'm pretty sure by the time I came along, she realized that you can't stop people from doing what they want to do. You just have to be there in case something goes wrong.
Yes. I'd like to talk about, and feel free to give this question as much energy as you want to, but the first time you thought this line of work could be suitable for you, what was happening? Where were you in life? Was it a particular event that happened?
So I started doing sex work 3 years ago. Now, just before that, I was already working a full-time job, and that full-time job was more like in a family business. And the business maybe wasn't doing so well, which means I wasn't being paid. Still working 40 hours a week, but I wasn't being paid, so I needed a second job. I took on a second job. I couldn't do it. Like, I take my hat off to anybody that has to work 2 or 3 jobs to get by, because I couldn't do it. So I ended up having to quit that second job.
Why hang around at the job when you weren't getting paid?
That usually comes down to family. It's what you do when there's a family business and you really love and care for the people that are doing it. And sure. I could really see where that business could go. And you know that it is doing quite well now for them, which is why I don't have to work there anymore. At the time, I came across an article in one of the newspapers on sex work, but it was a really negative article. And I sort of have this mindset when I read stuff in the paper and it's really negative, I usually assume that there's another side. There's another side to every story. And yes. I went looking for it. I was like, oh, what's the deal with this? Is this even legal? I didn't know people could even do that. So I went looking and I found all the rules and the acts and the regulations, and I reached out to the local peer group. So there's like a Respect Inc. is the peer support group for sex workers here in Queensland. I even went to Brisbane and met with them, and I met with other sex workers. And at the end of the day, I thought, hang on a minute, I've been having all of this sex for free. You mean I could have been being paid to do it this whole time? I'm going to have a crack at this.
Can I jump in, Nikki? Can I jump?
Yes.
If I can jump in there, because I have sex for free as well, but it's with someone that I love, and I'm in a relationship with them, and it's a big part of any relationship. What was going on for you in regards to relationships at that point?
Yeah, so at that time I had, still do have, my partner. I think we'd been partnered for several years at that point. And I think we were just driving on the motorway one day, and I said, I think I could probably do sex work. And his response was, yeah, I think you'd be good at it. And then we didn't have another conversation on it for a couple of weeks. I went away and did my research. And to be honest, we probably had about 4 or 5 more conversations around sex work, what he would need from me to feel comfortable with me doing that work. So some of the initial rules, I guess, that we came down to were things like I would only see clients if I was being paid. So I wouldn't extend their time to hang out and socialize with them. Because if I was socializing with a client or giving away my services for free, to him, that would feel like cheating. That would be like creating a real relationship with another person when I was lying and saying that it was just a client relationship. So kind of having those boundaries and differentiating between what is a client and what is work versus what is an intimate and caring relationship with your partner. And the reality is more and more people see sex as just an activity. It's like sport. Some people like tennis, some people like football. If he loves football and I hate it, I don't want him to not go and go play football, go get your own friends, go get a group, have fun. I'm going to go play tennis. So
sure,
we see it more like an activity.
Okay, and I respect that. Did you guys, for here, it sounds like when you broach that subject of, hey, I'm, very casually, it sounds like, hey, I'm thinking about becoming a sex worker. He didn't seem overly surprised or concerned about that. Did you guys have, pardon me for asking, did you guys have an open relationship at the time?
We didn't have an open relationship at the time. We'd done some swing groups and that sort of thing with other couples, but we didn't have other partners and other girlfriends at that time.
Okay, so it wasn't necessarily a surprise to him when you said, I would like to, look into this and become a sex worker.
Yeah, not particularly a surprise. I think the thing for he and I is we've always been able to talk about any topic under the sun, and it really didn't matter what it was. We're the type of people who, we could do the drive all the way to Melbourne without the radio, without music, and just talking the whole way. So, I don't think there's anything that's a surprise for either of us.
It's a sign of a good relationship, isn't it?
I believe so.
So many questions, Nikki. I'll go to this one. The first time someone paid you for sex, explain that in as much detail as you would like to give.
Let's see how intimate.
Maybe not too much detail. It's a family show.
I'll keep it appropriate. So the first client that I went on, it's kind of weird, but the first client that I went and saw was very much I call it a joint effort between my partner and I, because we were both sort of reading the text messages and responding to the inquiries together, because I was figuring out how this would all work too. I didn't really know, and he didn't really know. My first ever booking is honestly a booking that I probably shouldn't have taken. I wasn't looking for red flags. I was doing all the silly things that someone new to the industry would do when they don't have a lot of support around them from like other peers and that sort of thing. I ended up driving to a booking that was an hour away from where I lived.
Wow.
And I got there and it was like a farming property. When you get to the big farm gates and it's like this dirt driveway that winds through the property and the grass is higher than your car on either side. And at this point, driving down this driveway, I'm thinking, is this how I become a statistic, you know? And I was like, but I've come this far, I'm not turning away now. And I'm glad that I didn't, because actually he was a very, very, very nice guy. And we had a really nice time. And I really undercharged for that first service. But at the end of the booking, and it only lasted an hour, and I walked away with a couple of $100 in my hand, the feeling was just one of, really? Did I really just do this? This is awesome. I felt really positive. I felt excited to have that kind of money. I felt really good about my body and who I was as a person, as weird as that is. It just felt really nice, comfortable, and normal. It just felt like I'd done a job, done some work, and I was going to head home.
How long after that first time did you then have your second client?
Yep, the next day.
The next day.
Yeah, I had a client the next day. And then I think it was probably a couple of days later that I had another client. Then there was a bit of a gap because I had, you know, study and stuff that I was doing. And that's the thing. I'm not a full-time sex worker because I have other things going on in my life. I have my studies. So there can be weeks where I'm not advertising. So any money that I earn when I'm not studying, that kind of has to be banked and put away to cover business costs and living costs for when you're not working.
Sure.
So sadly, there's no holiday pay or sick pay. Or
no one putting any super away for you, Nikki.
No, those are all joyous things that I have to do.
Sure. You mentioned red flags then, and you're driving down this farm property, as you say, long grass. I'm assuming you went by yourself?
Correct. Any other way would be illegal.
Is that right?
So here in Queensland, you can have another person with you, like a security person, but that person would need to have their security license, all of those security qualifications.
Right.
And they can only work for one sex worker. They are not allowed to work for multiple sex workers. That's just the law that we have.
Okay.
Now, I don't know about every other sex worker, but I don't do that much work that I can afford to hire my own private security full time.
Sounds pretty cool,
though. That's just
not
a thing.
Your own security
It would be
guard.
fantastic. Like, wouldn't I feel like such a celebrity, you know, having my own security guard?
That's right.
And the reality is, most sex workers are in that position.
Well, that leads me then to, they can't afford it, of course, but it leads me to these red flags. If you are going by yourself, it makes these red flags even more, important to be aware of. What are, now that you've been in the industry for several years, what are the red flags that you're looking for?
So so much of the time it's just intuition. Does something just feel off? In this instance, he'd already told me that it was a farming property. He'd already raised that and let me know. So it was something that I was like, it wasn't a surprise to me. But it can be little things like if I'm going on an out call, because we'll talk about an out call, which is going to their place, which is the most risky, in my opinion, of the work that I can do, because you don't know who else is there. You don't know what you're walking into. You don't know if there are hidden cameras. There's a host of things you don't know. So when you get there, you're looking for things like, does anything seem off or odd? Does something not stack up with what he has said? Little things like having a look at the front door. How many shoes are by the front door? I mean, if there's a guy there living on his own, how many shoes does the guy have, really?
Right.
So you're looking to see, does that mean that there are maybe some other people here? Just anything little that seems off. But for the most part, people are lovely, and I've never really had a problem. You get pretty good at figuring out from a text message whether or not they're a genuine inquiry or if they're just here to waste your time. If they start the text message disrespectfully, or they haven't even bothered to read your ad or have a look at the website, then there's probably not much point, because that tells me that they're not going to they're not interested in what I do or don't do, which means they're probably not interested in getting consent. And consent works both ways in this industry, by the way. Clients have a right to consent as well.
Of course. As said, but I know you said that you haven't necessarily had any negative experiences, but is there one that could have gone awry?
I think the reality is I think could probably all go awry if they weren't nice people. I haven't had any really go awry. I've had someone who tried to pay me with fake money. So that was interesting.
Wow. What sort of money was it?
So in China, you can buy what they call it training money. And the thing is, it looks like a regular $50 note, except it's got like some blue Chinese writing scrawled all over it. But you can buy it in this country as well, and they'll send it over to you. And if you fold it the right way, or if maybe cashiers aren't paying enough attention, it'll slip through with the rest of them. But yeah, he tried to pay me with 50s. Obviously, I wasn't having that. But unfortunately for him, I'm quite comfortable in going to the police and going, yeah, here you go, police, here's the fake money that I was given. This is the picture he sent me, that he has a lot more fake money. He's probably going to try to spend somewhere. And so, yeah, I went and reported him for fraud, because that's what it is. He's trying to pay for a business service with fake money. Yeah.
So did you leave that situation with the fake money, or did you say to him, hey, no, I won't accept this?
So I was foolish. This was probably one of my original bookings. And ultimately, I got to keep the fake money because I wasn't letting him have it.
Yeah.
But this is the catch-22 when you're working in that situation. You have to make the decision, if I become difficult with this client, is the client going to become difficult with me? You know, so I've caught him out and giving me fake money. And you need to be as nice and kind, as polite as you can in having them leave, because you don't want to escalate the situation at all, because at the end of the day, you don't really know who's visiting. It all worked out well. I kept his fake money and handed that over to the police. So, yeah.
Okay. So essentially, you didn't get paid for that service. Is that fair to say?
I did not get paid. So it was reported. And here's the other thing. At this stage, you know, this was 2 years ago now. I still don't know what happened with that particular incident.
Sure.
I don't know whether or not he was ever actually charged. I don't know if he was ever found guilty. I don't know the outcome of that case one way or the other. What I will say is that the Queensland Police were very nice, polite, and respectful to me throughout that entire process. Which unfortunately is not the anecdotal case that I'm hearing from all sex workers across Queensland. I hear a lot of sex workers say that they've had some very negative experiences with the police. And that, I mean, that's not surprising, because in Queensland, the police are the ones who regulate our industry. As a business, we don't have a typical business model like every other industry. So the police are both, they're both the people that we need to go to for safety, protection, and help, but they're also the people that are looking for workers who might be doing the wrong thing. And so it makes it very difficult for sex workers to come forward.
Okay. You mentioned about hours earlier on. I'm interested to know, if someone was a full-time sex worker, what sort of hours, or how many clients a day might they see?
I guess it's interesting, because I know some workers who will see a lot more clients than I do. I know when I go on tour, for example, I might see up to 4 clients a day. I know that there are some sex workers who will see more. There are definitely sex workers who see less. It depends on where they live. If you're in a bigger city, you may have access to more clients, but there are also more workers there who are vying for that same client pool. I know that there are some workers who, you know, they're barely earning any money. They might earn maybe $400 or $500 a week. And then there are some workers who are earning, you know, 4,000 or 5,000 a week. I think that I feel that that's probably more on the rarer side. You might have to live in the big cities to achieve that kind of money. I know I'm not making that kind of money. And it'd be nice if I was making that kind of money. There's also a lot of expenses that go into it too, you know, especially when I go on tour. I know here at home, I have the apartment where I live, and then I have an apartment where I work. So, you know, covering the cost of a
Right. So
work
you have a
apartment on
second
top of everything.
rental where you see clients.
Exactly. I know a lot of workers who will just try to use hotels to do that. That can be a bit tricky, especially if clients cancel or no-show. It's a lot of time wasters in the industry.
And then you're paying for that hotel that not going to
you
get
pay for a
used.
hotel and then nobody turns up, or they've just wasted your time, or But for the most part, people are lovely.
So for you to have that second rental,
Mm-hmm.
you know, ongoing, you're obviously seeing a number of clients to make that viable each week.
Exactly. There's a certain quota you kind of have to achieve, really, just to be able to cover the day-to-day costs. And that's, you know, if we segue a little bit into COVID-19 and dealing with all of that, I've only been back at work for 2 weeks because as an industry, we were closed for 4 months. I still had to cover all of my bills, including, you know, my business apartment, without an income. So that was interesting. You know, obviously that's not a unique situation for me. A lot of people experience that. I was fortunate in that I was able to access JobKeeper. So I at least had enough money coming through to cover the cost of the rent, you know, on the business property and that sort of thing. But I know a lot of other workers weren't able to access that. And some of that really comes down to stigma of the industry. For them to have to go to Centrelink or to go and say, yeah, you know, I can't currently work and this is the work that I was doing, they may not be face-out workers. You know, the risk for some people, if the greater society finds out what work they do, is huge. I mean, even little things like trying to get a business bank account. I had to go to 3 different banks before I could open a business bank account. And it's not that I'm not allowed to have a business bank account. It's just having to say, I'm a sex worker, this is what I do. Either people don't know or understand enough about it, or they don't know that it's legal. It just creates all these little extra barriers. And if you want to get a loan, that's a whole nother kit and caboodle. I mean, as a small businesses find it difficult to get loans anyway. But then you add the stigma of sex work on top of it, and it just, little things just become this massive mountain that's really hard for people to get over. Now, I can say all of these things from my position of privilege. You know, I'm white with a very good education, a level of education, but not a lot of other people, not everybody has that. So I can get over these mountains and these hurdles and get my way through it, which is why I advocate so much, because I know how hard it is for other workers who have to try to get over these mountains and molehills that they just can't seem to cross.
Sure. Nikki, I want to turn the page and talk about your personal relationships. Obviously, you've had the same partner, the same male partner now for several years. But you alluded to earlier that you are in a polyamorous relationship, meaning you do see other partners as well. Has that started around the same time as you getting involved in sex work?
I think it sort of, I think it did. I think I was probably in sex work for about a year. And then it probably started with my partner, my original partner, because he had a crush on a lovely lady. She's lovely. And he wanted to date her. And I was like, well, date her then. He's like, is that a thing that we can do? I'm like, yes. I mean, why wouldn't it be a thing that we can do? If you know, love is not limited. You know, people's capacity for love is almost, you know, to infinity. If love was a limited thing, we'd probably only have one child. You know,
can I jump in, Nikki? Because that's I definitely respect what you say, but for a lot of people out there, they may disagree. When your partner said, you know, I'm interested in this other woman, you said we'll go ahead and date her. Like, was there any
Hmm.
level of jealousy or anger at that point?
No, not for me. Um, I think that at the end of the day, no one person can fulfill another person. You know, we all have needs and interests that are unique to us that are maybe not shared by the other person. Um, and we had conversations around what would I need to be comfortable with him dating another person. And for me, it was a case of you know, you still need to make time for me. I still need to feel like I am loved and cared for and respected, and that this isn't just your way of getting rid of me by finding somebody else. And it's not like that at all. It's just opening both of our lives up to another person to have really intimate and close relationships with.
So he started seeing this other person,
Mm-hmm.
and what was her response knowing that he was seeing somebody else?
To be honest, I don't really know what her response to that situation. I mean, when they first met, from my understanding, she knew that he was in a relationship, and they just clicked, and they talked about so many things. They had so many things in common, and they just had chemistry, and they just had that connection. And then when her and I got together and we got to talk for the first time, we just connected like really like close friends. It's like we'd been friends for years. Um, it just it didn't feel weird and it didn't feel unnatural. It just felt like an extension of our loving group, of a family group, really.
So when you say you're in a polyamorous relationship, that's the three of you that we're talking about now?
So I currently have a second partner. I've dated a couple of other people along the way, but like when you date most people, sometimes those dating situations just don't work out. You don't connect. So currently, I think that's a thing, right? We all
Yeah,
we all have to date like a million different people, and most of them do not work out.
sure.
So am I being greedy? Hoping that
Some people can't
probably
find the
greedy.
right one, Nikki. You've got quite a few of the right ones. It's very
So
selfish
it
of you.
seems, I know, my bad. Um, so I have my original partner, and then there's another person that I'm currently dating, and then my original partner has sort of a girlfriend that he is currently dating. Now, myself and the girlfriend, we get along really well. We're more like close friends and that sort of thing. But her and I don't have that kind of intimate sexual connection because we just didn't click that way.
Right.
If we had, maybe we would have more of a that sort of a relationship, but we don't. So it's more like really close friends, and yeah, it's always interesting. The amount of communication though required from people is quite
It's paramount, isn't it?
huge.
I
Yeah, I
know.
mean, I know.
Go on.
I was going to say, I know communication is critical to any relationship, but when you bring in a third person and you start having communication, it goes through the roof in terms of the amount you have to have. Even just
Sure.
figuring out, where are you going to be tonight? Are you going to be here? Is she going to be here? Well, I've got this on. I've got late classes. Shall we go and do dinner? Shall we all do dinner together tomorrow? Let's go
Wow.
bowling. That sort of thing. It just increases it. But I
Oh,
think the benefits are also there too.
I've chatted to a swinger couple on the show before, and much like this conversation, very, very intriguing chat that we had, and they spoke about that communication. They also spoke about I don't want to say the word rules, but maybe boundaries is a better
Mm.
word to use. When
Mhm.
it comes to that sexual activity between multiple partners, and maybe it's at the same time, is there boundaries that you and the various partners have?
At the moment, I don't think that we do. When I first started doing sex work, that there definitely was, um, and that was more around things that I couldn't do because he and I hadn't done them yet, and we really wanted that to be something that we could do first. And so they were kind of off limits in terms of work. Those boundaries really come in for, I feel like it's for the other person. It can be something as ridiculous as, I'll give this as an example. I really like, plays and theatre and that sort of thing. Now, if my partner was to take the girlfriend to go and see the theatre and I wasn't invited,
I see.
I would be devastated. Like I would feel like that to me would be cheating, because that's something that I love so much and I love doing it with my partners. Why have I been excluded from that?
Sure.
Whereas if they want to go snorkeling on the reef, by all means, yeah, you guys go do that without me. Like,
that's not a
please
priority
just
for
don't get
you.
eaten by a shark,
Yeah. And even in the bedroom, if they were doing something, you would be okay with that? It's not necessarily a priority?
Yeah, no, that doesn't particularly bother me. I mean, I've been present in the house when they have been having sex. I've had to walk through my apartment to get something while they were making out, and it wasn't, for us, that wasn't weird. You know, I know for a lot of other people they'd be going, no, that's just it. But it wasn't weird for us. You know, for me it was seeing two people that I love and care about, loving and caring about each other.
It's very refreshing, can I say, as a heterosexual male in a what you might call traditional relationship. I'm not in any way motivated to be involved in that world, but can I say it's so refreshing to hear from someone who is obviously an intelligent person, but it's what works for you, and you're not confined to the quote unquote rules that we are, maybe taught in life to follow. You're just sort of running your own race. It's great to see.
And as long as everybody in the situation is aware of and consenting to it, and I guess that's where people come unstuck. You know, when they're not open with that communication, and if they feel that, right, so and so has said no, I want to do it anyway, and I'm going to go behind their back and do it. Then you're going to really run into problems, because that's not going to work. You will always get found out eventually.
Well, can I ask about that? Because in a traditional relationship, and I even hate saying those two words side by side, but anyway, here we are. That's the word that would be used a lot of the time if someone was contemplating doing it. In fact, the person probably wouldn't even ask their partner, and that hence where cheating comes from, is they go behind their partner's back and they do whatever they need to do. The other person then will leave or put up with it. Is there, like in your relationship, in your situation, if your partner wasn't okay with something and said, no, that's not okay, is that something you then go, okay, well, I respect that and then I won't do it? Or where does your head go at that point?
For us in our situation, at that point, I just go, okay, I can't do that right now. That's not something that we can do. And it's not like it's a blanket, that's it, it's never going to happen. Sometimes it's just about having that conversation a bit more. I remember the first time I sort of had a crush on somebody, like a real kind of crush that I wanted to pursue outside of my primary relationship. I flagged that with him quite early. And I said, look, this may turn into nothing, but, how do you feel about me sort of pursuing that maybe there's something over here? And he was like, okay, yep. Yeah, okay, we can keep talking about it. Open to the idea. Let's see if that turns into something. Whereas other times it might just be a case of, no, I'm really not okay with that.
Not okay with
and it's
that.
about respecting that,
Sure.
And that's the reality is, if you're people that are two people in a traditional relationship and one person wants to explore that and the other one doesn't, at this point, I feel like you kind of have two options. You can either go and do whatever you want anyway, and the reality is your relationship is going to suffer. that's just how it works.
Exactly.
You see it time and time and time and time again. If you're not on the same page, then it can't happen. Whereas sometimes you can talk about it and go, well, what's the objection there? What's the worry? And is the worry that you just don't love me anymore? Is that why you're going somewhere else? And sometimes just saying, what does your partner need to feel more comfortable and confident in what you're doing over there? Do you need to be more mindful of date night? Are you not really giving your partner everything that they need so that they still feel loved and wanted and cherished, so that they feel secure in the relationship? And sometimes it's just a case of, no, thank you, they don't want to be involved in that kind of situation. Again, your choices are to go and do that or not, and let the chips fall where they may.
There's going to be consequences, exactly.
Exactly.
You've been in the industry now for 3 years. You're still young, attractive woman. Is there a long future for you as a sex worker?
That's kind of one of those really surprising things, because I know people who are sort of in their 50s and 60s who are still doing sex work. It really surprises people to learn that there really isn't an age cap on the industry. Anecdotally, I've been told from other workers who have been doing it since they were in their sort of early 20s that their work really doesn't pick up until they reach their 30s anyway. Yes, there's something to be said for the very young, pretty sex worker, but there's also something to be said for connecting with someone who's got some life experience, who has done things in the real world and can engage back with you. Because sex work is, while sex exists within sex work, it's not just about sex. It's about intimacy. It's about connection. It's about making those connections with another person. And anecdotally, I've heard from clients that that's harder to do with younger people. So yeah, there's a bit of longevity in the industry into your 40s and 50s.
Is that how you feel?
I certainly think so. I mean, I like the work that I do. I can't see myself leaving it anytime soon. That said, there are other things that I want to do with my life. Like I have creative writing and stuff that I do, so all those other things I want to do, but this just gives me the flexibility to pursue other aspects of my life.
Nikki, I've noticed, I had a look at your website, and I noticed the various services that are on there. The girlfriend experience, or the GFE, as I'm working out, is a popular is a popular choice. But you also have the 15-minute quickie.
Yeah.
I'm interested to know.
Now let's explore this briefly.
Please.
So I'm trying to figure out how to word all this very carefully, because I don't want to come under fire for breaching regulations.
Okay.
Now, I have to be very careful, because you can't advertise on the radio. There are certain ways you can and can't advertise. So I have to be careful that this doesn't become an advertisement.
Got it.
I wouldn't want either of us to get in trouble for illegal prostitution now. So
is it worth me taking that out, what I just asked you, or is that okay?
Not at all. I can talk broadly about the services that are often offered in the industry.
Okay.
So it's kind of tricky, because the sex industry is so broad, and there are so many different services that different people will provide, from a very basic, I think what the industry tends to call a full service sex is really just very basic sex. There's no intimacy in it. There's probably no kissing. It's just sex. It's very quick sex. The GFE, or the girlfriend experience stuff within the industry, that tends to be more intimacy, more connection. I know a lot of workers will start to include kissing at that point. There are definitely workers who don't do kissing. And they start to really do that connection. There are workers who will then go what they call the porn star experience. So think if things that you've seen happen in porn, they're probably more likely to do that.
I've never watched that, Nikki, so I wouldn't know.
Well, you're a very rare human. Do not Google it.
My eyes are wide open after this conversation, can I say?
Oh, well, hopefully it's a good conversation.
It certainly is. Let me ask about that girlfriend experience. When,
Mm-hmm.
and pardon me if I'm encroaching on these things that we can't talk about, so we can steer away if we need to. But when someone asks for that girlfriend experience, what exactly does that few hours, or I know sometimes it's an overnight thing, what exactly would happen?
So it would really, okay, so it's completely different depending on each worker, which doesn't make it easy for clients, but typically most basic sort of girlfriend experience things might only be half an hour to an hour. And really that probably just involves intimacy. It involves cuddling, it involves hugs, usually some kissing, there's sex, but it's more what you would do if you had a girlfriend. Then those are the things you're likely to be doing. Now, I know when they get more extended, so some people will do dinner bookings. Go out, you have a nice dinner, go back to your room or your hotel, and then, get busy. Overnight booking is very much the same thing. It's just the level of connection and intimacy is there. And I think we often forget, if you're in a relationship and you've got a partner, sometimes we forget that there are a lot of people out there who are not.
That don't
And
have
some
that.
people are long-term not with a partner. And there can be a host of reasons that people aren't partnered. But we forget that human connection, human intimacy, touch, it's a really big and important part of us feeling like we are worthy, that we're not this hideous, ugly thing that nobody wants to see. We are actually, worthy of love and connection.
What do you do? You just sparked another point of interest for me. Has it ever happened, and maybe one of your peers may have had a situation where there's just zero attraction to this client, absolutely none whatsoever. Has it ever got to the point where you've thought, I can't go through with this?
I've not had that, personally. I've not had that. I have this, okay, it's a bit of a joke, but it kind of runs true. When people ask me, I'm thinking about doing sex work or being a sex worker, what advice would you give me? And I would tell people, what you need to do is you need to go and catch a bus into the city and have a look at who is on that bus. Because you've got all people from all walks of life on that bus.
Yes.
Everybody looks different, everybody walks different, everybody is just different. Have a good look around and go, would I be comfortable in having sex with absolutely anybody that was on this bus?
Wow.
Because the reality is you don't know who is coming to your door. And if you're not comfortable with that, then it's probably not going to work for you. Whereas I don't really see, actually I've had this question on TikTok. Someone asked me, how do you sleep with ugly people? So people are pretty straight up with their questions.
That's essentially what I was asking, but I was trying to be a bit nicer about it.
Yeah, no, TikTok people are not as nice about it. They just go, how do you sleep with ugly people?
That's right.
I go, I don't sleep with ugly people. I hate the phrase ugly people because it often gets, bandied around to basically say that because of something about someone's physical appearance that they can't change and they have no control over,
Exactly.
that person's unworthy of intimacy and connection. What makes somebody ugly to me is the personality that they might bring to it. So if they are rude, if they are demanding, if they ignore consent, and if they just have expectations over my body, then those people they appear ugly to me, and I won't see them, and I won't continue a booking with them. But if your nose is wonky, if you've got one ear bigger than the other, I just genuinely don't see that sort of thing. I just see a really nice, interesting person that I get to spend some time with. that's just me and how I am.
Nikki, I'm wary of time and certainly appreciate you having a chat with me today. You have been so open, so honest. For a lot of people, this is a world they would never have known anything about, except for, as you said earlier, what they've seen in Hollywood films and maybe stories that they've heard or whatever. So to get a first-hand look at it, we certainly appreciate it. Is there anything that you would like to leave us with? Is there, a message on behalf of sex workers that you would like the general public to be aware of?
I think if there was anything that I would leave people with, it's just the idea that sex work is real work. The majority of workers that are out there doing it, we're just running it like a regular business. We've got ABNs and we are paying our taxes. I know there's this myth that, we're out here working in cash and we're not paying taxes. We're paying taxes. I don't understand why people keep thinking that I don't pay taxes. I do.
Yeah.
There's really not that much that you can do with cash anymore. If I want to get a car, I need to have money going into my bank account to prove that I can get a car, that I can float that kind of loan and that sort of thing. So, sex work is real work, and that's pretty much it. We're just regular people with regular lives. We have partners. Some people have kids and families, and some people have other jobs that they do, what they call muggle jobs or normal jobs.
Muggle jobs.
Muggle jobs, yeah. Got to go and hang out with the muggles and do my muggle job. Because obviously we live in this magical world. So
Exactly. Nikki,
sex work is real work.
Well said. One last question for you. If Nikki Vee today was talking to Nikki Vee as a teenager, what words of advice or what message would you have for that person?
If I had to talk to my teenage self, I would probably tell my teenage self that sex is something that you can be in control of. Sex is something that you can do because you want to do it. Sex is something that you can tell other people, no thanks, that's not what I'm interested in, that's not my jam, and pass on it. And honestly, I'd probably just tell my teenage self that you're a heck of a lot prettier than you think you are.
I'm sure most teenage girls probably need to hear that as well.
Yes. Trust me, teenagers, you'll look back on yourself in 30 years and be like, why did I even think?
How good did I look then?
I wish I looked like that now.
Exactly. Nikki Vee, a joy to chat to you. I love your honesty and more power to you. Thanks so much for your time today.
Not a problem, Matt.